So earlier today, outside of Donald Trump's trial, a man self-immolated. And immediately a lot of people are claiming it's like a Trump supporter who must have been supporting Trump or something. Turns out it is a leftist, a Bernie Sanders supporting anarcho-communist donor to the Democrats. And he put out some manifesto, basically hated everybody. So we'll definitely talk about that. And man, it's gonna be a wild day, I guess. We'll got a crazy story to kick things off. Joe Biden has set in place these Title IX rules, basically ending women's rights as far as he can and mandating pronoun usage and stuff like that. So it's Friday. I guess we're gonna roll with it. Before we get started, head over to castbrew.com. Why? Because you can buy coffee, the best coffee you'll ever have. More and more, I hear this. The people who try Appalachian Nights say they can't go back to any other coffee because it's too good of coffee. I heard, and maybe this is fake, but this is what someone told me. They said a liberal friend of theirs, they tried Appalachian Nights and were shocked, and now that's all they want. And then, my friend was like, are you going to watch the show? And they're like, no, Trump supporters are bad, but this coffee is really good. So, winning hearts and minds through coffee. Castbrew.com. When you buy Castbrew, you're helping support our physical locations, which we've got currently set up. We got one is being built in Martinsburg, West Virginia. And as a member of Timcast.com, go to Timcast.com, click join us, become a member. You'll get access to our Discord server and our members only uncensored shows. Those are Monday through Thursday at 10 p.m. But the elite members of Timcast.com at $100 a month or more, and by all means, just wait, because when the new space opens, the second floor of the building is going to be a private members only club. It's $100 a month to be a member of the club. You'll get your own key fob and access. And that money basically pays for the staff that are going to be there opening it. It pays for the food and the drinks, the TVs, and keeps everything running. The goal of this members only club is not profit. It's part of a for-profit company, but the goal is to create networking spaces where people can meet up. So on the first floor when you're buying coffee, on the second floor for the club members who want to roll out ideas, maybe make a video game, maybe make a song, work on some kind of project. And then the Discord server, when you're a member at $10 a month or more, you can hang out online with like-minded individuals and network and work on those projects as well. Networking is the most effective way to win a culture war. So support the show by helping win the culture war at the same time. And I will also stress, YouTube has just deleted our two biggest shows ever 3 years afterwards on trumped up retroactive policy enforcements, effectively telling us that at any moment they could ban the show. That's basically what they said. I get the veiled threat. They were like, yeah, 3 years ago, you broke the rules and now you're getting a warning. Do it again, you get a strike. I'm like, do what again? The show's 3 years old. There's nothing to do again. We did it already. And they're like, oh, well, that's unfortunate, isn't it? So at any moment, the show could be nuked, but I would say they nuked us already. At any moment, we could disappear. So we do have contingency plans. We are talking with top men, and there's some cool things in the works. But become a member at timcast.com if you want us to continue in the event of these attacks. Also, smash that like button. Subscribe to this channel. Share the show with your friends. Follow us at rumble.com/Timcast IRL. And follow me at Timcast on Twitter for important reasons pertaining to what I just talked about. Joining us tonight to talk about this and much more is Brandon Gill.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brandon Gill. I'm the Republican nominee for U.S. Congress from Texas's 26th Congressional District.
Right on. All right. Well, thanks for hanging out. That was easy.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we got Phil hanging out.
Hello, everybody. My name's Phil Labonte. I'm the lead singer of the heavy metal band All That Remains, anti-communist and counter-revolutionary. Libby, how you doing?
I'm good, Phil.
It's
how
good
are
to see
you?
you. I'm
nice
well.
to be here with you, Phil, and you, Brandon, and you, Tim, and Serge. I'm Libby Emmons. I'm the editor-in-chief with the Post Millennial and HumanEvents.com.
And I'm here too. Last one in the studio. Let's go.
Here's a story from the Post Millennial. Man who lit himself on fire outside of New York City Trump trial ID'd as anti-fascist agitator Max Azzarello. Final post was singing "Start a effing revolution." The man was ID'd as Max Azzarello, who claimed to be an investigative researcher. So I guess that's the story. I mean, do we know he had a Substack called the Ponzi Papers? He put out a manifesto. Do we know why he did this? What was he trying to do?
He sort of hated everybody. He seemed pretty black-pilled to me. He was definitely leftist, as we saw. He posed with Bernie Sanders, but his manifesto called out the hypocrisy of conservatives and liberals. And he also seemed to be a little nuts, but he blasted the apocalyptic narratives that have been coming down the pike. He blasted media.
Apocalyptic narratives?
Yeah. Is that the manifesto story or the other one?
I think this is the other one. This is the Start a Revolution one.
Hold on one second.
Oh, there's like writings in there. I don't want to show his writings. If you want to,
there's writings. Let me just pull it up because this is one
his
that
Substack stuff.
I was working
Here's a
on this
picture of him
story
with
right
Bill
before
Clinton.
the show.
I feel bad when I see this guy's picture. Like, this poor guy gets lied to, tricked, manipulated, driven insane, and then he tortures himself. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, no, it was a really sad situation. Here, let me pull up the. Here, wait a second.
This guy didn't really have? Did he have coherent politics, or was he just kind of?
Well, he was a
this
leftist,
is-
so no.
But this is one thing he said. He called out what he said is a sharp rise in apocalyptic messaging. Climate change will kill us. COVID will kill us all. Vaccines will kill us all. AI will kill us all. No matter the bubbles we ascribe to, we're bombarded with existential crises with no solutions. We've seen a surge in apocalyptic film, literature, and video games that tell us there is no way out of our poor circumstances but total societal breakdown. Zombies tell us that the public is our enemy. He said, this is a rotten farce. For our entire lives, we've been flooded with media designed to slowly steer us into a world where the American dream was dead, where the public was fully divided against itself, where everybody believed we were powerless to do anything about our worsening circumstances. It is also they can organize an unprecedented apocalyptic rug pull on the entire populace as they pivot to fascism, which is perhaps best understood as kleptocracy at the barrel of a gun. When we piece it all together, we understand the truth. We are in a totalitarian doomsday cult.
I think that was just him, you know.
Just riffing?
No, in the doomsday cult.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the attitude that he had, the way he viewed the world. Meanwhile, you've got a lot of optimism and people who are fighting every day. Every generation has its challenge, whatever it may be. What I think is particularly funny about our generation's challenge, it's that it is the excesses of the previous generations. So it's like all of the good that came from the previous generations resulted in problems for our generation. And the good resulted, what I mean to say is a lot of great things resulted in people who were entitled, lazy, and didn't have anything to fight for and became purposeless. And now we have leaders who don't care. We have aging leaders who are on the verge of dying. And I don't mean that to be mean or crass, but I'm sorry, man. You look at Joe Biden. His eyes are barely open. He's doing cornholio hands. He's and I'm like, dude.
And to your point, like even if you're talking about the aging leaders that have their their S together, like we talked about Dennis
Kucinich, he rocks.
here, 77 or whatever, and he has his stuff together, but he's still old, and that means that he's got a perspective that someone that's 77 is going to have. Same thing with Donald Trump. Same thing with when Joe Biden is coherent. He's 80 or whatever. Like these people have a perspective that is different and doesn't see the problems that young people see today.
Do you guys remember that viral video where it's the children talking about the economy and war and they sound like adults? It's because back in the day before institutionalized learning facilities, children were imitating adults. And so they didn't know as much, they weren't as wise, but they were inheriting these behaviors. We've infantilized, like every generation has infantilized the next, to the point where I think the main reason why we don't see more millennial leadership is that millennials in their mind have a mental block where, well, only they can be the leaders. I was talking to this pro skateboarder who's, in his 50s, and he's like, I'm an old man now. And I'm like, dude, you're as old as you've always been to me. When I was 10 or 13 watching your videos and you were 30, like you were an old man. And now I'm 30, you're the same dude you've always been. And he had a good laugh about it. And I'm like, but think about that. That means that today you've got these millennials who should be filing to run for office, but they still look to the Bernie Sanders, to the Dennis Kucinich, to the Ron Paul, to the Joe Biden, to the Donald Trump. And they're like, no, it's they're the ones who are always in charge, not us.
Right. And I got a lot of pushback against this in my race. So running for U.S. Congress, I'm 30 years old, right? And I'd have a lot of people question me and ask me, how can somebody who doesn't have any life experience be running for U.S. Congress?
Like, I'm 30.
Whenever you're 30 years old. And I'd say, well, one, at 30 is not that young. I mean, most of our founding fathers, whenever they were signing the Declaration of Independence, were in their 20s or 30s. I mean, these were young guys who were putting their
life.
life.
A young guy.
Exactly.
They
How old
were
was he?
all-
He was like
Hamilton.
18 or
He
something?
was like
think he was
18
like-
when he
yeah.
started. When he was like stealing cannons.
They were like,
downtown.
you have no life experience. Like, I am a 30-year-old man. Like, I don't know what, like, 30.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I'm old.
I mean, you look at John Adams' son, John Quincy.
John
He
Quincy.
was sent away, when he was like 13 or whatever, sent to over to Europe to learn to be an apprentice. And that kind of stuff that happened regularly. If you didn't, you may go to college, but you would go be sent off to learn some kind
he
of
went
trade.
to Harvard too.
Yeah.
But John Adams had a son who was a horrible alcoholic and left his wife and went to ruin and died and a whole mess. Yeah. I mean, a lot of these problems stay with us forever.
Sure. I mean, they're human problems.
The human problems stay with us.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, it's true what you're talking about with millennials and people not wanting to take responsibility. I think a lot of that with the millennial generation was the first generation that was really over mental healthified. They were encouraged to constantly examine their own feelings. And that puts you in an infantilized state because that's what little kids do. Little kids think about how they're feeling and try and understand their experience and gauge what's going on with the world compared to how they feel. And millennials just ended up trapped in that cycle well into their 30s. They still talk about that. Like you'll talk to the millennials in my family, for example, and they'll just be openly telling you about their mental health issues. And it's like, really, but how about getting a job and having kids?
It's not just that millennials have a mental block. It's that the attitude that created millennials as permanent children is the same attitude that will not vote for a millennial. It's that you get someone who's in their 30s and they're like, I'm 37, I have 4 children, and I own my own business, and I'm successful. And they're like, you're so young, I won't vote for you. It's the craziest thing to me. It really is when I'll meet someone who's in their 50s, and they'll go, you're still a young man. I'm like, I'm 38. Okay. I am 39 is the beginning of middle age. I'm not a young man. I am just a regular man. I'm not an old man. I'm a man, but I get it. The old guys laugh and say, I wish I was 38 and young like you. And it's like, no, I get it. But young is 20. And at 20, you are still an adult. 2 years into adulthood and signing contracts. We can't keep maintaining this idea that 30-year-olds are young. But what happens is, even if a millennial runs for office, the 50-year-olds are going to be like, he's too young. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm going to vote for the old guy. And then young people are like, yeah, only old people are in office. And then what do we get? Everybody in office is super old.
Right. Everybody in office is super old. And we forget that a lot of the reasons that our country is in such a terrible position right now is that we've had the same people in office who oftentimes whenever they got elected were in their 30s. It's just that now they've been there for 30 or 20 years. They're in their 50s or 60s. But we've had the same people doing the same things for decades now. And now we're starting to really, really live with the consequences, whether it's a massive deficit or whether it's a foreign policy that's still living as if the Cold War is still alive, or as if the United States is so clearly in a position where we can just dump unlimited amounts of money all over the globe or all over our own country.
Which we're certainly not.
Which we're certainly not. But we have people who have been in office for so long who are still living as if like the United States is where it was 50 years ago. And that's a huge problem. And we're the ones who have to deal with the consequences.
Joe Biden was 30 when he was sworn into office in 1972.
And he was considered young when he did.
Yeah. 30. Joe Biden was 30 and he's still in a leadership position.
Wow.
That's ridiculous.
And it's funny because there are still people who are young and vote for him thinking, well, he's the one with experience. It's like, no. Look, I'm not going to bring a 60-year-old football MVP who's the greatest player of all time and he's 60. Okay, well, he can't play anymore. I'm sorry. But Joe Biden, for some reason, gets a pass. The dude can't keep his eyes open. He told Israel not to attack itself, which, to be fair, was good advice, but it's not the advice he meant to give. And he's muttered gibberish over and over again to the point where I'm shocked because people clap for it when he does. So I guess that says a lot more about our population than just Joe Biden.
But that's the problem is that experience on its own doesn't really mean anything. It's like experience of what? What have you actually done that's
a really
good?
Good point, especially when you consider how much of DEI is about the lived experience of this person based on the total sum of their skin color is enough to give them a position to, manage the health of millennials, the mental health of millennials,
right.
or whatever it is. But that's what a lot of that is about. It's about your experience.
Right. I mean, it's like President Trump went into office having no political experience prior to that at all. And I think has been clearly the greatest president in modern history. Biden, on the other hand, has been in government, to your point, since he was 30 years old and has run this country into the ground in just a mere 3 years.
Yeah. Never mind all the harm he did prior to that.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have any problem dunking on Joe Biden. In fact, I took some pointless dunks today myself. But at the same time, he has done nothing to help fix the country or make the country better. But a lot of the stuff that we've got going on, save for the stuff that at the border, because that I think directly relates to him pulling back President Trump's executive orders. Otherwise, most of the problems that he's got, they were kind of baked in for the past decade or so, maybe even more, because the problems that we're seeing when it comes to legislation and stuff, they're because of the attitude that a lot of people have nowadays, and I think that comes from we talk about politics being downstream from culture. I think Joe Biden is as much a symptom of where the left is as Donald Trump is a symptom of where the right is. So,
well, let's jump to this next story from the Post-Millennial. Former J6 committee chair moves to strip Secret Service protection from anyone sentenced to more than 1 year in prison. Okay. I'm sorry. Look, there's already these conspiracies popping up all over the place that they're going to try and take the life of Donald Trump. You criminally charge the guy in a bunch of different ways, and then while he's in trial with a bunch of seemingly biased jurors, you go, and also you will lose your Secret Service protection. I'm like, come on, man. Did you guys see what Andrew Schultz was saying?
No.
He said, we've been getting this wave after wave after wave of Boeing planes being unsafe and then crashing and crashing. Well, guess who owns a Boeing plane?
Trump owns a Boeing plane?
Trump owns a Boeing plane.
Oh.
And then everyone on his show, they're like,
than these concerns, though, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of the concerns of the Boeing planes has more to do with maintenance and the
Yeah.
current staffing at these companies and not Boeing. So it's a funny point to make. But look, if the argument is they can't stop Trump, the Trump train's unstoppable. You see someone, why would you, what is this?
Well,
They want to put Trump in prison and then take away his Secret Service detail, and then all of a sudden the cameras break, the guards fall asleep, and then Trump lunges off the top of his bunk bed or something, if you get my drift.
right. Yeah, that does sort of appear to be the goal. You also have Hunter Biden facing federal gun charges. I think his trial is coming up in June, and there could be jail time with that as well. And Hunter Biden's Secret Service detail when Biden was living in, we were talking about this before the show. It was either Malibu or Santa Monica or something like
California.
that. It was definitely California. But his Secret Service detail spent $4.5 million in 2021 just tracking him around, living in a fancy place nearby. But yeah, Trump and Hunter Biden would be the ones to suffer under this.
They would make an exception for Hunter.
You think so? And
Yeah,
Benny Thompson is deranged. I mean, he was the chair of the J6 committee, and he hid evidence. He did all kinds of ridiculous things.
And I think that stuff like this, there's already been so much talk about how much the left is going after President Trump. They're doing everything they can in the legal system. They're trying to tear his reputation down, tear his family apart. They're going after him with everything that they have. The last thing that they have is to try and take him out. And all this does is get conservatives rightfully worked up over the prospect of the left coming after President Trump much more severely than they have in the past. And I think that the left sees this, and it's just like kind of poking the bear. And they know that they can get away with it, and they just want to antagonize our side. I mean, at some point, all this is, whether it gets passed or not, a lot of this is just to antagonize the Republican base.
Well, I mean, that goes kind of without saying. Like the target of your action is your actual target, or your target's reaction is the action. Like that's the point, is to get people to do things that either make themselves look ridiculous, like that you get a mascot to do something that is just borderline breaking the law, or pushes on someone, so that way you can get pictures of the cops arresting a guy in a chicken outfit. Right. It looks ridiculous, makes the cops look bad, and they win.
A better example is at Occupy Wall Street. Yep. They would strike a cop, and then as soon as the cop fought back, they'd start filming. And then they'd say police beat innocent protesters.
Yep.
So you'd have these protesters, they'd plan this. They'd run up, they'd hit a cop, and then immediately go, no, please, please. And the cops are hitting them. And then the video footage shows cops beating someone, crying and begging. But, right, that's the point. Mm-hmm. There was one famous video where the cop is swinging his baton and they made it a lightsaber. So it's whoom, whoom, and he's hitting everybody. And then they were like, the point was, haha, this cop was beating people and we made a joke out of it to make fun of him. The real video was several people walk up to the police barricade where the cop is and they start rattling the barricades. The cop tells them to stop and then someone flips the cop's head off and shoves him. And then he starts pushing them back as they're shoving him. Then as soon as he swings, that's where the edit begins to trick people into thinking the cops were attacking them. That's the game.
I mean, this is what we talk about, or this is what we mean when we talk about things that are fifth generation warfare or whatever. It's a war of narrative and a war of what you can get people to believe. Because if you can get people to believe that things are happening that are not happening, you end up with, well, George Floyd essentially. The media had told a narrative that police were killing black men in America to a level where there are people that you can interview on the street and they will say that they believe thousands of black men are killed every year by police, which is, it's patently not true. The average was like 13 or 14 that were actually, unarmed that were killed by police in a country of 330 million people. But yet because of that narrative, you have the whole BLM movement, you have all of the civil unrest that we've had, all of the riots, all of that stuff, because the general public was of the opinion that thousands of black men per year, which once you start actually dissecting the idea, it becomes ridiculous. It gets to the point where it's like, oh, wait a minute, that's kind of crazy, because that's we would notice that kind of death toll in society, but when you are just hear it as an emotional wedge or whatever, people say, oh my God, that's terrible, because we don't want to be a society that does that. The gut instinct is that's awful. We don't want that. And so it plays on people's, emotions, and you get literally a decade of civil unrest and a less harmonious country because of a lie pushed by the media and people with a political bent. And it's literally it's made America worse.
Like the trans genocide, which is also a lie.
Yeah, that's probably not as, it probably doesn't have as deep and consequential.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. But it could very well, because who knows how many people are going to have horrible things going on in their life because of that.
And it's the strategy. I think it's Alinsky. Accuse your enemies of what you're doing.
Yep.
So you get the media that comes out and they accuse the people who are telling the truth of being the liars and keep the cult functioning.
Yeah. I mean, we've got two people that, because of the left-leaning narratives and the essentially wrong things that the left pushes, we've got people that are killing themselves by setting themselves on fire now. It's disgusting.
This is why I say that when it comes to like abortion and sterilization and things like this, it just hits the left. The end result is going to be a conservative future.
Maybe so.
There's no other mathematical path forward. People argue that they're indoctrinating kids, but it's just like, guys, if the left ain't having kids at all, indoctrination is meaningless.
Well, you have to, if you're not having children to reproduce for your ideological side, you have to go indoctrinate them.
But that's substantially less effective than literally having kids.
Well, for sure. Yeah,
so,
I'm just saying that is the.
Give it 40 years. I was thinking, yeah. But I was thinking this too. I think, I said this on Twitter that support for Israel is over.
You think?
100%. And of course, the conservatives who are staunchly pro-Israel reject this idea, but they're wrong. And I'll tell you why. You have on the right now with Donald Trump's faction, you have the people who support Israel and the anti-interventionists. Trump's base is largely anti-intervention. We don't care about other countries. We don't want to fund these other countries. We want to secure our borders, bring our jobs back. They say we want to give funding to Israel. And people are like, no funding for Israel until we secure our borders. It's not that they hate Israel. It's that they're like, why are we spending money there? How about we secure our borders, we stop the crime, we get our jobs back, then we can fund other things. Then on the left, they just all hate Israel.
Yeah, did you see Ilhan Omar's daughter got arrested at Columbia?
So this is the younger generation. In 20 to 40 years, this sentiment's not going away. It's going to be the dominant sentiment. You're going to get a bunch of Republicans who are like, we don't want to fund foreign wars. We want to secure this country. The left is then going to say, we don't care why you're defunding Israel. We hate Israel, so we'll agree with you. And then funding is cut from Israel. I don't see how that survives in 20 years. Now, I bring that up not to get into an Israel conversation, but to point out this extends to literally everything. What the millennial generation and Gen Z value in 20 years will be it. So what you're seeing now with Trump is not going away, it's expanding. The deep state, the establishment can say, we're going to lock Trump up, take away his protections, and all that means is in 20 years, there'll be 10 more Trumps. Because young people hold these views, and that's it.
And, something that Bannon said, or has said multiple times, is Trump is actually a moderate. Because if you look at the positions that Trump holds, all of his positions are acceptable Democrat Party positions in 2005.
Oh, for sure.
2003.
He's basically a moderate.
Yeah. And because of how far the left has pulled the country and pulled the national kind of zeitgeist, they've managed to characterize him as far right, but that's only because of how far left they've managed to pull the opinions of the average normie or whatever. But go ahead.
No, and I was going to say, and I think that's the thing with foreign intervention. I mean, for years we've lived under a uniparty in the United States that has advocated basically getting involved in every single foreign conflict on every single corner of the globe since the fall of the Soviet Union in 1989. And we've had this view that we have unlimited resources, we have unlimited potential all over the world, and there's no drawbacks to getting involved. And over time, whenever we invade Iraq, for example, find out that there were not weapons of mass destruction, and we get involved in a 20 plus year long war with no concept of what victory looks like and no path to peace until we have a humiliating withdrawal eventually from Afghanistan. Eventually, the next generation says, well, I'm going to be a lot more skeptical of getting involved in any foreign conflicts, whether these are just or not. And what we've seen right now, I think, is that the left or the uniparty has conflated Ukraine funding and Israel funding. So there's a large contingent, even on the political right, who would be more normally accustomed or more comfortable giving funding to Israel, who, because we've been dumping money in Ukraine for so long without having any pay for, is getting really, really skeptical. And I think that it's the uniparty who is so invested in conflict all over the globe, including in Israel, that's going to end up shooting themselves in the foot with this.
Well, what happens if we don't fund Ukraine and we don't fund Israel? What are the downsides?
Well, that's the question that very few people in the uniparty can give a clear and articulate answer. I think that there's a much more compelling answer for sure in Israel, where the United States does clearly have some geopolitical interest in making sure that Iran isn't nuclear armed. But in Ukraine, I think that's a much more difficult case to make. And I've never seen anybody make a compelling case for why we should be spending billions of dollars in Ukraine, other than some half-baked comparison to Putin being Hitler. Mm-hmm. That it relies on a very shallow understanding of World War II and of history. I've never seen anybody make a good case.
Yeah, I actually went to a debate on this because I was interested, and I was like, okay, I don't know that much about the arguments on either side. I know sort of how I feel about it, but feelings are irrelevant, right? Mm-hmm. So I went to listen to it at the Council on Foreign Relations in New York, I guess a couple of weeks ago or whenever it was. And you had people on both sides. You had John Mearsheimer on one side with Daniel Davis, and on the other side you had Paula Dobriansky and Heather Conley talking about why we should fund the war in Ukraine. And Mearsheimer and Davis were both like, we can't win, and nothing we do can make us win. So what we should do is negotiate for diplomacy and for Ukraine to be a neutral territory, and Ukraine should not join NATO. And that will sort of smooth things out and lead to peace in that region. And then on the other side, you had Dobriansky and Conley saying, if these guys want to die for their freedom, then we should let them do it and we should fund it. And that funding is good for essentially the American economy because we're paying ourselves to build weapons that we then give them, right? And also they were saying, that if we don't fund Ukraine, then Putin sweeps into Europe entirely. And it was like, That doesn't. That
I
doesn't
think- I
seem
think
like a
Fund
great reason.
war because it's good for the economy sounds like a pretty depraved excuse
really did
for,
seem
for
depraved.
people slaughtering each
But
other.
I think maybe the mistake we make is that we don't use that same tactic. So I'm going to revise my tactic. Say, so from now on, guys, Antifa and these leftists need to be criminally prosecuted, because if Antifa is not prosecuted, they're going to storm into Illinois and start killing random people. They will take over Illinois. So that means if we don't arrest them now in Minnesota for their autonomous zone, next thing we know, they're going to take all of Illinois.
Or Atlanta.
Yeah.
Where they're already trying to take over in Atlanta anyway.
Well, they were doing that, and so we have to stop them in Atlanta. Otherwise, they'll take Florida.
They'll take Florida next.
Oh no! Oh, we better be hyperbolic and claim that our enemies are going to be 100 times worse than what they're actually doing. People will believe it, I guess.
More than what they're capable of.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. I guess they're going to have a vote on that. I guess the funding bill got to the floor, and they're going to vote on it.
Look, if anybody would be willing to make a bet with me, if it was like a sports betting app, and I was allowed to make any odds wager, like that the funding will happen, they could say like a $100 bet wins you 10 cents. I'm taking that bet. I'll be like, oh, I get a free dime, huh? Free money. You think they're gonna not fund Ukraine and Israel? And there's some what other Taiwan, right.
That's the other one.
Yeah, that funding's happening no matter what you
Yeah,
think.
It's happening.
It
So
doesn't
if they
matter.
came in and said $100 bet wins you 1 cent, I'd be like, okay, so how much money do I got to put in to make $100? Because it's a safe bet. It's happening, and there's nothing anyone's going to do about it. You can protest, you can cry, you can whinge. Now
and it doesn't matter which party's in charge either.
Right. Yep.
Doesn't matter when.
I love this. Mike Johnson's like, I was a populist guy, and I realized the government was wasting our money. And then the deep state brought me in the back room and beat me over the head and told me do it or else. And now I agree. We should absolutely be funding all of these wars. You know what I love when he's like, I encourage all the other members to see the classified briefings. And I'm just imagining they like bring him into a back room and then strap him down and then pull a slug out of a vat and they put it in his ear and he's like, ah, and it goes into his brain and he's like, all right, let us begin the operation. And then like, that's just really what it is. I know what they're really doing is they just hand up, can we give you they go, Speaker Johnson, we'd like to give you the classified briefing so you can really understand what's going on. And he's like, yeah, that sounds reasonable. They walk, he's like, right this way. They open a door. He walks inside, they close it. He's in a janitor's closet and they're like, what's going on? And then he just hands them an envelope and he opens it and it's a picture of JFK. And then he's like, message received loud and clear. And then he walks out of the closet and he's like, we must fund Ukraine and Israel and Taiwan.
What do you think's in those JFK things that they won't release? And Trump was like, I'm not releasing that either.
Well, I
don't
mean,
know.
it's the same thing with the FISA vote, right? I
Right.
mean, Congress basically voted to suspend the Constitution and allow FISA to surveil American citizens without a warrant, is allowing the federal government to buy data from big tech companies to monitor American citizens. You would think that if we're going to go that far beyond the Constitution, there's going to be some clear and compelling reason why we're doing it. I don't think they should be doing it at all.
Same.
But I'm just saying, if they're going to do it, you'd think that there'd be a really good reason. And yet, all I've heard is that there's some national security rationale that's out there in the ether that every deep state politician keeps alluding to, while at the same time doing absolutely nothing to secure the southern border, which is being overrun by an invasion from hostile foreigners. I mean, the idea that we're doing this
Yep.
for national security purposes is so asinine. It's insulting.
The brain slug theory makes me feel better because then the thing about conspiracy theories is that you absolve yourself of responsibility. Like, oh, the aliens have taken over. I can't. No, the reality is we have as American citizens are not being attacked by an alien mind control brain slug. We are being controlled by an institution of corrupt intelligence agents that are addicted to the machine they've built, and we have to hope and pray that we can start flipping this machine off. And that means we need more America First patriot members of Congress, starting with Donald Trump. And Donald Trump's a moderate. He's just a reaction. 20 years from now, it's going to be wild. They think these leftists are saying like, oh, he's a fascist or whatever. Dude, get out of here. Trump's a moderate.
Yeah.
I think Bannon was saying something like that. Like you think Trump is bad. Give it 10, 20 years.
And I mean, they come after you if you stand against the deep state. I mean, I'm the Republican nominee right now. I'm not in office. But last fall, I was the executive producer of a movie called Police State. And the premise of Police State is that the
that's really
FBI...
interesting,
yeah, it was, if I can say so myself, it was a good movie. And it's about how the FBI has been weaponized against conservatives and Christians. And I would tweet out things like defund the FBI. And I sincerely think that we should. I think that that's a long overdue reform that we passed up. And whenever I got into my race, we had 11 people that I was running against. And I think that the DC swamp had seen that, and a lot of the moderate Republicans who tend to be more aligned with what we might call the deep state or the establishment spent over $2 million in my race against me in attack ads in the last 2 weeks of the race trying to take me out. And part of it was based on those tweets. In fact, they referenced those in the attack ad. So they took that and they contorted it and ran all kinds of TV commercials on broadcast and cable, were texting people, putting stuff on the radio saying that I wanted to defund the police and open our borders. And they were getting it from the defund the FBI stuff. So my point is, and remember, this is in a Republican primary prior to a runoff. In Texas, if you don't get over 50% of the vote, the top two contenders go to a runoff. 11 people in the race prior to a runoff. They spent $2 million against me, not against anybody else, just against me.
Wow.
Not in favor of anybody else either.
Oh, just against
but
you.
Just against me in slanderous attack ads based on this kind of stuff. But that's the kind of fire and fury that will come after you if you stand up against this stuff. And I can only imagine what our patriot elected officials are going through now who are voting against some of this FISA stuff.
Oh, interesting.
Let's jump to this next story from ABC News. Biden expands Title IX protections for pregnancy, trans people, and sexual assault victims. Oh, that sounds so lovely. Part of this is that it basically strips sex-based protections, and now sex and gender identity are effectively interchangeable. It mandates pronouns, I hear. What else? Have you been reading into this?
Yeah, this is something I was digging into this morning, actually, and I was writing about it. The new Title IX rules also roll back due process protections for people who are accused on college campuses. Primarily, this has been men who have been accused on college campuses of, all manner of horrible things. And under Donald, remember Me Too?
Yes, so, but while it may do that, there is a counteraction, and that is, if any of these men accused just identify as women, it all goes away.
Yes. So basically, this bill says believe all men who say they are women and believe all women who accuse men. That's basically like the premise.
So you're basically just having a bunch of guys going to be like, I get it, fine, I'm a woman, I don't know, whatever.
Right.
It's going to mean that a lot of men or a lot more men are going to be disincentivized from going to college and stuff.
Disincentivized from going to college, disincentivized from asking a woman out.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Perhaps,
definitely.
From interacting with women in any
with
way.
Women at all. Yeah, and so you're going to have women who are incentivized to falsely accuse because they're going to be able to get away with it. So any woman who is spurned or who perhaps, doesn't like a guy can accuse him.
Maybe, but if that guy, sensing that something is off, he could just identify as a woman and then accuse her first.
Yes, that is definitely true.
This happened. Remember the story where the guy accused the woman first? Like something happened where a guy and a girl hooked up and then she was saying things. So then he immediately ran to the Title IX office, I think it was, something like that. And then he said, I was assaulted by her. And then they were like, okay, he said so. And so then they started going after.
And then they had to do an investigation. And then, she's not allowed to face her accuser.
Yep.
At this point, that's the rule. Now universities don't have to permit you to face your accuser. You don't have to have a hearing. You can have everything on the side and in the background. I am a huge proponent of due process rights. I think it's a hugely important part of our Constitution. And I hate seeing these rollbacks. We've seen them, across the Me Too movement. We've seen these rollbacks for due process rights. We saw it in Donald Trump's civil case with E. Jean Carroll and stupid Letitia James. We saw it there too. Like, no due process. Trump wasn't even able to defend himself in the civil case with Letitia James. In the E. Jean Carroll case, she was able to bring an allegation 2 decades after the supposed incident.
3.
3. And if you recall, she cannot tell you when this apparently occurred.
And also the dress she was wearing didn't exist around the time she claimed it happened.
She changed her story after it was revealed that the dress, the Donna Karan dress she was wearing didn't come out until, the spring of whatever. So, yeah, so I hate this. And yeah, this also has an expansion of rights for people who are trans by just conflating gender identity and biological sex. So all of the protections that were there, sex segregated protections for women, are now available to men who say they are women.
So you're in favor of segregation, Libby?
Yeah, I'm in favor of segregation based on biological sex to protect women.
All right, agreed.
But isn't that the point for what they're doing? Is it's like there is no due process for a guy that's getting accused, and you're being the accusation
is enough.
The accusation is enough, and these are cases that are being adjudicated by woke leftist colleges. I mean, can you imagine whenever they're going through all of this behind closed doors, what else they're looking at? Like your social media posts that you've said, like your political opinions you've had in political science class. How much is going to go into these decisions?
It's actually really simple. If you are a college student and your family donates to the cult, yeah, you're fine. That's it. These panels are going to be like, no, we think he's good. Look at these women who are posting on X where they're like, don't listen to these women who claim they were raped on October 7th. These are white women attacking people of color. And it's like, whoa, wait. It's believe all women unless they're Israeli. That's apparently, it's because their ideology is actually just, do we get power from it or no? So if a woman accuses a man and then they go, oh, wow, a man assaulted you, bring him in. And they go, it was him. They're going to go, wait, that guy over there? Well, he's one of our biggest donors. You must be mistaken. Get out. You're a fascist. You're a white supremacist. You're a white woman trying to attack a poor person of color. And they're going to be like, he's white. He's Polish. Slavic people are people of color. That's
the rule?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Okay.
Not white. Yep.
Yep. They are not white.
Interesting.
And they'll be like, well, he's part Polish. They will make up whatever reason to defend their power structure.
Yes, that's accurate. That is accurate. Like we even saw that with the left's refusal to get behind women who in the Muslim world who were fighting against Sharia laws and all of the restrictions and the clothing restrictions. And the left didn't get behind them. They instead said things like, well, that's just their culture. Why? Because it doesn't help you to get behind a bunch of poor Muslim women who don't want to have their faces covered in public. That just doesn't help you. And these are the same people who are now basically like in favor of Iran, even though Iran was doing horrible things to women over the past few years, Now,
I think there's something about the left's ideology that flourishes on stripping away at the dignity of individuals. So whether it's like these guys who are getting accused of sexual assault and have no ability to actually defend themselves, or if it's the little girls who have to change in a locker room or take showers with biological men. I mean, that is such a strikes at like the core of what is right and just and what it means to be a dignified man or woman.
Well, that's communism, right? It's destroy the individual.
Yes.
That's communism. I mean that's COVID lockdowns too. That's whenever the government steps in and says, you're no more than an economic unit, and we're going to decide whether you are either needed or you're not. And if you're not needed, you need to stay at your house. You don't get to go out to dinner with your wife or with your girlfriend. You don't get to go on dates. You don't get to do anything. You don't get to have a part in civil society because you're no more than what we tell you are.
Here's the issue, though. You take 10 women, line them all up, and you ask them, biological males in allowed in female spaces, yes or no? 7 will say yes. Allowed. Let me clarify. 10 millennial women or younger, and that's what you get. Older generations, not so much, but think about what that means moving forward. This is not going to go away. It's going to expand and exacerbate, at least among female voting patterns. The 70% of millennial women who are voting for all of these leftist issues are not going to change those views. Those are ingrained, and they're in their 30s. They're going to be in their 40s, 50s, 60s. And the younger generations are what we need to, who we need to be teaching. Now, it is fair to say, these people don't have kids. So I imagine what will happen is there'll be a normalization period where when you have the millennial generation and the Gen Z of comparable size, and then Gen Alpha is slightly smaller and the next generation is slightly smaller, there's going to be effectively the millennial females voting for these things will have disproportional amount of power generationally because the younger generations are less. Whereas normally the older generation starts to lose power because younger generation's worldview outvotes them once they get into the 30s and 40s. We are already seeing it with 70 and 80-year-olds who are basically running the show. Same thing's going to happen as generations get smaller. The older people will have a disproportionate amount of power until they eventually age out, as I would call it. But this means, again, 70% of millennial women vote Democrat. You go to someone and say, males, trans or otherwise in female spaces, and 70% of the women you ask, they're going to say, yeah, it should be allowed. And if that's the case, well, what's a guy to do, right? I don't use women's bathrooms. So I'm kind of like, whatever, I guess. It's your bathroom, ladies. And if 70% of your generation and younger are in favor of having dudes be allowed in there, that's democracy. That's it. You lose. They've taken your space. Then what? It's women who want this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's women who are compliant and acquiescent.
Yeah, but it's women voting for it.
No, I agree with you.
So that's not that's leading the charge.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they started out leading the charge. I think they've been duped.
I think it's women. It's
certainly part of the feminist program, but I think they were duped into it. I also think women were a little duped into abortion. Yeah, to a certain extent, to by trans identifying males.
Trans identifying males would the ultimate idea is this. It doesn't matter who convinced them to vote for it. It is their choice.
Oh, for sure. I agree with you.
So you can equally argue that men could tell women don't do this, but women choose to support one thing over the other, regardless of who's arguing for it. Mm-hmm. So this is women's choice to allow biological males in their bathrooms.
Yes, women are choosing to do it.
Right. Yeah. And then guys at the same time, they're like, look, man, women are like, you're a man, you don't have an opinion on abortion or whatever. And it's like, sure, I also don't care about your bathrooms. Let all the dudes in there. And then they're fine with it. It's like, okay. Many women are upset, and that's unfortunate. But the problem is, so long as women overwhelmingly want men to be in their spaces, it will happen. And I don't know what the answer to it is. Enough liberal women and men vote for these things to enact these policies.
Yeah, it's pretty bizarre. I don't understand how. I mean, I do understand how they got there with the feminist movement.
I think
it's very.
This shows a large portion of women want men to be in charge.
I think that's probably true.
These women who vote for men to be in their bathrooms, deep down, just want men to be in charge of them.
Or is it an age thing? Because it's like, if you're a slightly older woman, like you're not changing in locker rooms very often, or you're not like showering after athletics period in your high school or whatever, you don't actually have to deal with the negative consequences of that. But you can be supportive of it and then feel really good and warm inside about how you're pro-trans or whatever.
Women love Dylan Mulvaney. Women love drag.
That's his fan base.
Women love men. Like, I think conservatives need to recognize this. Mm-hmm. Women overwhelmingly watch shows like RuPaul Drag Race. They like watching men be better than them. But it's not a joke. They want to see men dress up in ways that they normally do and do it better.
You didn't intend for it to be a joke. That doesn't mean that it's not a joke.
The videos, there's videos on TikTok where it's a man putting on makeup while talking. Like, I find these videos to be insufferable. It's like a trend started by women where they're doing their makeup and I'm like, you know what I saw today? Like, guys started doing it, and the guys who's that, James Charles or whatever his name was? There was the guys get Charles. Bigger. Women would rather watch a guy put on makeup. Women would rather watch a man do burlesque. Women would rather men be in their sports teams and win. Women want men to be in charge. Not all women, but these women keep voting for it because they love when men do things better than them. A biological male was Woman of the Year several years ago. Mm-hmm. Women love it.
Well, 70% of
yes, of course, 70% of millennial women and large. I don't know if the number translates down to Gen Z and younger, but younger women absolutely love when men are better than them.
Will they, whenever it really strikes at the core of their dignity, though? Like whenever they're told that you're in high school and you've got to shower with some dude who wants to put on a dress and say that he should be on your sports team. But you think that they're going to tolerate that?
Yes, because they do. They already do. See, I think this is like conservative worldview bias, where it's like conservatives can't imagine because the women they know are like, I don't want men in my room. But no matter what happens, Even when you had at the Wii Spa in San Francisco, it wasn't even a trans person. It was literally a serial flasher. The other women in the spa were like, leave him alone. Leave her alone. She's trans. And they were like, the police go, actually, this is a male who's not trans who has repeatedly done this, and you defended him anyway. And they're like, well, we thought he was trans. Like, millennial women they like it. I mean, you look at sports. They will come up with every excuse in the book why they want men to win women's sports. So I think what happens is conservatives are with conservative women. The conservative women are like, I do not want a male in my bathroom. And they go, yeah, women don't want this. And then 70% of women vote in favor of it. And they're like, no, that must be something. No, that's what women want.
There's also, though, a huge proportion of women, like some huge majority of women who don't believe that men should be playing in women's sports.
Right. But that's 30. That's the older generation for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And so my point is when it comes to our generation and younger, they're overwhelmingly in support of this. And my point is simply, I wonder if something happened where men have backed off to the point where women have found a way to try and put men back in charge of their lives.
I think there are many women, and I think women sort of as a whole do miss leaning on men to make decisions and to be a partner in a way where, somebody has to get the veto power, right? In a family or in a workplace, like someone needs to have the final say, even if you're partners.
Part of the phenomenon that you see it seems to me that you see with like the women that are feminists that have a kind of a go get 'em kind of attitude, like they're going to be the ones that are like, I want to be out in the world doing this. I want to be, having an effect on the world. And women that are like, I want to be at home and I want to be, a homemaker or whatever, they're like the people that are just like, I want to be left alone. Whereas the people that are like, I want to be active in the world for myself and do this, they're not like, I want to be left alone. They're the ones that are saying, oh, I want the law to cater to what my lifestyle. And because I want the law to cater to my lifestyle and I'm an active kind of person, I'll go ahead and be like, blah, 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 blah. Whereas people that are just like, oh, I want to be left alone, they don't want to be out actively trying to get the government to do stuff because all they want is to be left alone. So they're at a disadvantage, in the fact of their temperament. The people that are feminists that are like, we want to make sure the law caters to us, they're going to be out there trying to get the law to cater to them, whereas the people that don't aren't going to be actively pursuing government solutions.
Look at the end result of this online stuff. What's it going to be? It's going to be teams comprised of biological males in the Olympics, no women's sports. There was a period where we didn't have women's sports. And somebody was arguing on Twitter, like back in the day, conservatives actually opposed women's sports. They're like, why would women need to do sports? Women should be working on home ec and taking care of families. Men do sports. And it was the progressives who were like, if women want to play, we'll set up teams for them. And now it's progressives being like, nah, we changed our minds. Dudes should biological males should be the ones taking over. I don't see why a country like, we saw this with the Soviet Union in the 90s, the women who were jacked up on steroids. A country that wants to win the Olympics need only say, okay, we'll send in a team of males, and then we'll on average just score higher and do better. And they win. That's good for their countries.
Maybe. I mean, I don't see why not. Or at some point, some country's going to be like, all right, let's do this.
North Korea, for sure.
The gambling's going to be crazy.
I mean, how do you even do it? It's look. This is the crazy thing about it. Well, let me do this. I want to mention the sports gambling, but let's jump to this story. We have Riley Gaines. 5 middle school female athletes in West Virginia refused to throw shot put against male Becky Pepper Jackson. This comes just 2 days after the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals blocked the West Virginia laws that says you must compete in the category that matches your sex. It's a sad day when 13 to 14-year-old girls have to be the adults in the room, but I couldn't be more inspired by and proud of these girls. Enough is enough. The tide is turning. So basically in this video, you'd see the girls walk up, do nothing, and then walk out. They don't throw the shot put. They refuse to participate. This is what they should be doing, and I have tremendous respect for it. Mm-hmm. Now, I'd like to mention where this goes, because Brandon, you mentioned sports betting. This is going to be the moment where the image shatters, unquestionably. When they start opening up DraftKings sports betting on a biological male fighting a biological female, and you're like, how come they're giving this fighter minus 1,000 odds? No reason. It's like, So if I bet $100, I win $1? Yeah. That's pretty crazy. Why? No reason. Just, good fighter. Yeah, it's going to be pretty wild when you open up DraftKings, and every single time there's a competition with a biological male competing on a women's team, the odds are the payouts are going to be dirt. You put because if the wild thing is under communism, they'd have to normalize the bets.
Mm-hmm.
They'd like, no, you can't set the, no, it's 50-50. There's two people and we're all equal and you can bet on who you want to win. It's like, I'll bet on the male.
Right.
I win.
And then the left-wing social pressure comes in and pressures people to place bets on the biological female, and then we start seeing some normalization. Mm-hmm. That would be really interesting.
Well, I think,
do they change as the media comes in? Do betting odds change as the media comes in and attacks?
So what happens is betting odds are basically what people are betting on.
Right.
So if they say we've got two fighters, here they are, and then everyone bets on fighter B instead of fighter A, then you win nothing if fighter B wins. You win a dime if you're lucky. But the person who bet on fighter A wins massively. The odds start shifting depending on how people are betting. So that's how odds are calculated. Horse races are easier for me. I'm not big on sports betting outside of this, but the horse racing is obvious because they show you the total prize pool. Mm-hmm. And then you can see how many people bet on which horse. And the more you bet on one horse, the less you're likely to win because all the prize pool is in one area. It's not like these guys are actually paying you. They're all from the prize pool. So what's going to happen is the narrative will be broken. You're going to okay, we got a boxing match, and if I bet on the female, you'll get value bets out of it. So people would make the bet. It's like a $1 bet wins you 10 grand. It's like, oh man, I could buy a soda. Why would I give my dollar away?
You'd give your dollar away. That would be what it would be.
But it would be a value bet. A dollar bet for a chance to win 10 grand. A lot of people would take. Why not? Maybe
but how many people would do it morally?
Has a heart attack or something. Who knows? I don't know.
How many people would do it morally, do you think?
Well,
because they're looking at it and they're saying that I've been saying for a very, very long time.
Zero. That
there's no difference between men and women. You don't think anybody would?
They're lying.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They're going to be like, why would I give my money away? I've virtue signaled on Twitter. I don't need to say anything about this. What would be funny is if you launched, if someone on the left launched a campaign saying, let's all wager for our friend to win. But the problem is they'd wager for the trans person.
Right.
The moral support would be like, no, we're going to support our trans friend. And
yeah, that would be the virtuous position.
Exactly.
Throw the woman under the bus. I think it's been a long time coming that women should not be participating when they are faced with a male competitor in these situations. The women who had to swim against Leah Thomas, I think they were a little gobsmacked by that and they went along with it. They should have backed out and said no. I think that's true in every single one of these cycling races where you have, the trans competitors coming in and besting the women in all of these cases. That's true in the track races in Connecticut. It's true in the, when people have been running against CC Telford, the NCAA, all of these situations. The right thing to do is to back out. Now, women look at this, however, and they're like, hey, I've been working my whole childhood. I've been swimming in all of these meets. I've given up so much. I don't want to have to give up more. And it is wrong that the championships and the scholarships, the awards, the accolades, even the 5th place trophies were taken away. But the only way to do this is a total complete boycott. On the other hand, what we'd find with the total complete boycott is that people aren't really that interested in women's sports. So that's a thing too.
I think women voted for this.
Yeah, women definitely voted for that.
I'm very proud of them.
Proud of them for voting away their rights. And
it's not men voting for this. If you look at the voting maps, if you removed every woman voter from the voting pool, the country is 98% red.
Yeah.
Men, it's not that the country, men are 98% Republican. It's that men are 55 to 60% Republican. Mm-hmm. So they win every district except for Oregon and Washington. And then if you get rid of all the male voters, then the entire country turns blue.
Well, along with these Title IX changes, one thing that Biden administration did not include were rules on trans participation in sports. They're still working on that. And they proposed a second rule. And the second rule would prohibit these kinds of blanket bans like West Virginia has that the ACL is targeting and the ACL is targeting in states around the country.
The ACL?
The ACLU.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry. So the ACLU has been targeting all of these things, targeting states that reject puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for minors and all of these kinds of things. And the Biden administration would say no, that you cannot have a blanket ban, that you have to have consideration based on age and skill level and all of these little metrics that would be very easy to then say that you were being harassed and discriminated against if you're not allowed to play on your gender-selected team.
Yep. And then why wouldn't these teams just become dudes? Look, they say that 30% of Gen Z identifies as LGBT.
Yeah, but one of those designations is queer, which is just a political
Sure,
designation.
doesn't matter. And they're saying that you don't have to dress a certain way to be trans.
You don't have to do anything to be trans. You can be.
Then it's simple. Like if Phil wanted to, he could sign up for a women's softball team and play on women's team. Why not?
Just
Just
like
call me ma'am.
in Lady Ballers, right?
Yeah.
But right. So why
You
wouldn't
have to scream, call me ma'am. You have to scream that.
So basically, what you're going to get is you're going to get A team and B team. It doesn't matter if it's if you call it men's or women's. What's going to happen is they're going to be guys who play on the basketball team for their high school, and they're going to be super good. And there's going to be guys who didn't quite make the team, and they're going to be like, I guess I'll play on women's. And they'll go, yeah. And then they'll go, Judge, I decided to be a woman. And they're going to be like, right, because men and women are interchangeable social constructs. You're on the women's team now, and there'll be no females.
I mean, the left
Yeah.
thinks that about just people in general. Like
Not
the
about
person,
race.
The person doesn't matter. But identity is a weird topic because it doesn't matter the person. The identity is what they're using.
The identity
They'll
is what
plug in
matters.
identities. But
That's
the thing
why
is,
viewpoint diversity.
yeah,
is
their
meaningless to
perspective
them.
is that the individual itself or the individual themselves doesn't matter. You know, that it doesn't matter who the person is. They believe you can just put them in and every person being equal will perform the job the same. And that's just not the case.
Yeah. You know what's funny? I went to Thailand on Chinese New Year, and I was in some big market in Bangkok. And it's this big, long strip, and it's crowded. And it's the weirdest experience. I could see the tops of everyone's head. It was wild. I mean, for real, it was like a weird thing for me. So I'm 5'10", so in the United States, that's like give or take, it's like average, you know what I mean? And I go to Sweden and Norway, and I am looking up at everyone. Like everyone is 6 feet tall in those countries. It's crazy. Then I go to Thailand, and I'm taller than everyone, and I'm like,
Isn't everyone
people
like
are different.
super tall in the Netherlands?
Yeah.
It's
Oh yeah.
freakish.
Yep.
They're freakishly tall over there.
Well, they would call it normal.
Yeah, they would. Well, I mean, that's why like that's where the idea of giants came from, because like people from the north that were really tall were coming down into like the rest of Europe and fighting with the people that were shorter, and they're like, "Oh, the north is where the giants are from. There's giant men up there, blah blah blah," because they were tall. So.
I go to Sweden and Norway, and everyone's tall. I go to Thailand, and everyone's shorter than me. The reality is people are different. You're not going to put a 60-year-old Asian woman on an NBA team. Mark Cuban, are you? I didn't think so. So, yeah, you can't have just anyone do any job. There's a reason why we have leagues. I think that gender makes sense. You know, there's an interesting question there, too. Why is the NBA, the largest demographic of NBA players, black, as well as, I believe, like over 6 feet tall? That's not fair, right? We need to bring equity into the NBA. The rules are arbitrary. We made the rules up. We said, here are the rules to be on the team. Okay, well, how about we mandate the team has to be ethnically and gender diverse? It's got to be half men, half women, and it's got to be the racial makeup of the team needs to reflect the national population.
And you can even have different height baskets for different height people. If you want true equity,
No, it's got to be.
you've got to adjust the height of the basket.
No. The teams have to be of average height.
Of average height.
Yeah, so if you
Okay.
so that means if you have one 7 foot tall player, you have to have at least one like 4'10" player to balance out the average. Because then what they'll do is they take the height of all the players, add them up an average amount, and it must equal the national average.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would work. That's
And you could
equity.
yeah, I mean, it's like the people on the fence, you know? The
I
fence
love
people.
that meme.
I see you post that quite a bit.
Well, because there's like some funny video where he's like, this meme is basically 3 people who have chosen to steal the ticketed required experience of watching a baseball game. And so he was like, equality is them claiming that they have a right to steal the experience. But unfortunately, one man is too short to steal it. So then he thinks he should steal the crates of the other men so that they can all steal it together, and they cheer for it. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
they love it.
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's Friday night, so I suppose we should just, have a little bit of fun with it. We have this segment from Daily Mail. Tucker Carlson says UFOs are piloted by spiritual entities with bases under the ocean and ground. I knew it.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't believe that.
Well, you're wrong, because Tucker Carlson is clearly right.
Apparently, I'm just curious as to like what happened to make Tucker Carlson believe that. I think that I have to watch the
Here we
podcast,
go.
Obviously,
UFOs and their pilots might not be extraterrestrials from a distant planet at all, but spiritual entities who have inhabited Earth for as long as humanity itself. At least that's a supernatural theory Tucker Carlson had on Rogan's podcast. There's a ton of evidence that they're under the ocean and under the ground. Carlson told Rogan's listeners during the show's usual sprawling 3-hour-long format, they've been here for a long time. His comments echo increasingly common refrain from UFO-curious lawmakers, blah, blah, blah. The first chapter of Ezekiel is pretty clear of a UFO sighting, Rep Burchett told reporters in January 2023, ahead of his push to bring UFO whistleblowers to testify before Congress. Whenever I use the term angels, added Rep Burleson, who had been privy to the classified briefings on UFOs, said, to me, it's synonymous with an extra-dimensional being. Well, you see, guys, that proves it. We are basically, you guys ever see that Flatland narrative, like document, like the?
No.
It's like a way of explaining extra dimensions. Because we live in 3 dimensions, how do you explain 4? You shrink things down to 2 and then show it from a 3-dimensional perspective. So there's this documentary called What the Bleep Do We Know? Have you guys ever seen that one?
No.
That was real big in the 2000s. It was hippie new age stuff. And what they show is there's this 2-dimensional plane, and there are creatures that live on only 2 dimensions. That means they can only go, left, right, up and down. They can't go forward and backwards, or however you describe it. No, they can't go up and down, then go left, right, east, west, north, and south. We'll call it that. And the way they describe it is a 3-dimensional being is above these people, but they have no concept of above because they only move in 2 dimensions. And so the main character sees the 2-dimensional world, and there's a little guy running around, a little Pac-Man. And when he speaks, his voice hits the center of the being's body. So they hear the sound resonating from within their own bodies. And they're like, where's this voice coming from? And it's like, from the 3rd dimension. I'm above you. Above? What does above mean? We don't have that concept. Like, do we have a word, perhaps I'm not familiar with it, to explain how would you describe someone who is in the 4th dimension and next to you or above you? Like, we have to relate it to 3 dimensions, next to or above. Mm-hmm. If you lived in 2 dimensions, above is a concept that doesn't exist to you. So it's like saying flurgle. It's meaningless. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, to go back to what Tucker Carlson's talking about with aliens and spiritual entities, we could be those flatlanders, these poor, doting 3-dimensional beings. We actually exist in 4 dimensions, mind you, but we can only manipulate 3. And then the 5th dimensional and higher beings are watching and can move easily in and out. And that's why they're only seen rarely.
Weird.
So I don't know anything about any dimensions beyond like the 4th dimension, but beyond like the time, like space-time continuum, the things that I can actually experience. But apparently it is alleged that there are like 11 dimensions that are the way they describe.
I think it's more than that.
Is it more than that?
Yeah.
Is it more than 11? Because I think it was string theory that was.
We're
it
well
was
beyond string theory,
but
brother.
We're past that. I remember
Yeah,
string theory
I mean,
too.
M
I
theory
had a lot
has been
of good imaginings about that.
Has string theory been replaced by M theory? Is
advanced
that the case?
Is probably the better way to put it. M theory is part of string theory, and I think M theory it's like 12 or 13 dimensions.
Okay, but it's something that we, just like you're saying, it's not something that we could understand. But I don't even know how to conceptualize. Like you're saying, I've seen some motion videos and stuff like that that were created by AI to try to explain multiple dimensions and stuff, but I can't. Trying to wrap your head around it, I don't have the ability to really comprehend multiple dimensions beyond space time.
Well, Tucker said it, so you have to take his word for it.
See, I kind of rely on the things that I've experienced, and I know, and that's why I'm an agnostic. I can't say that things don't exist that I haven't experienced, but I can only rely on my senses. So we'll go. I'll take Tucker at his word, but I can't say that I believe that it's.
Libby thinks Joe Biden's an alien.
I don't know, but I do think whenever UFOs are in the news, that means something is going to happen with Hunter Biden.
Quick, Google search Hunter Biden. Tucker
Right,
talked
just
about him.
quick.
No, this is just because Tucker went on Joe Rogan, and of course, these are the things that Joe Rogan will talk about just to have fun and have a good time. And Tucker said it, so Alex
So it's
Jones
news.
said it too.
So it's news.
That's the thing. It's like I didn't realize that Tucker was doing things that were so Alex Jones-esque. But then again,
no one's ever asked the guy.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So,
Well, what do you think? Do you think? Well, I suppose the question is, who in here believes in angels and demons?
Angels and demons. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think angels and demons exist.
Well, that's what Tucker's saying.
Yeah.
He's like, there's no difference. They're extra dimensional beings that have always been here. I suppose then what Tucker is saying is kind of the simulist, secularist view of what literally is already in the Bible and in Scripture, that there are entities and beings of good or bad or whatever that seek to influence.
Yeah, I do think that there are that exists. I do think demons exist.
And what do you think they're doing?
I think they are trying to steer people towards evil and cruelty.
Are they winning?
Are they winning?
Yeah.
every day.
I think
They lose every day too.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I think the battle is inside each individual's heart. And that's what I think. It's probably a little naive of a perspective.
I don't know if
believe that.
aliens exist or not, but I certainly think that the idea of the spiritual realm manifesting itself in some form of UFO-esque, appearing entity is not as far out there as it may come across, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Well,
how is that a more ludicrous explanation for what people are seeing than that it is something from like the fourth or fifth or sixth, dimension.
I kind of feel like there's almost this unity in secularist simulation theory and scripture with how crazy things are getting. It certainly seems like whatever the big picture is of life on Earth is coming to some kind of climax, and perhaps it is only the end of season 2024, and that's like, we're on, if we break it up to like 80-year periods, then we're in, season, I don't know, whatever, 200 and something. But there seems to be a climax period, the grand finale of whatever this current arc is, bubbling up of evil, of anger, rage, war, conflict. Some people believe it's biblical, it's messianic, and some people think it's angels and demons or whatever. Based on the way things are going right now with Israel, Iran, Biden, Trump, all of these unprecedented things, when someone goes online and they say, they fired up CERN and all this weird stuff happened, I'm kind of like, yeah, or this is the climax. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I still, you and I have had this conversation before. I think that we are always in a time when we want to feel, I think humanity is always in a time when we want to believe that it's the end of the world and it's the apocalypse, and we're always comparing what's happening to various
True, like all
end
throughout
times.
history.
Yeah.
From like the time Jesus was alive and like the temple was destroyed, or going through whether it's like the Crusades or the World Wars or whatever.
Right now
you
is a
see
bit-
constant references to the end times, and I'm not saying they're not. I'm just saying that's a constant thread throughout history, right?
That's why I'm saying it could be the end of a season.
Right.
A season of humanity.
Yeah, like the season finale is coming up. It's like, ooh, I wonder what's going to happen at the end of this season of Human. Are they going to go to
That
World
is
War
kind
III
of-
and bomb each other?
That is kind of interesting too. You wonder like at what phase are we between, the present and whatever the massive next conflict is, which of course there will be one, or whatever the next huge global shift is going to be. It's exciting. I always think there was this playwright called Len Jenkin who wrote this play called Dark Ride. And at the end of it, you have all this crazy stuff happens because he's a crazy writer. But at the end of it, he says something like, I don't care about philosophy. Just tell me how it ends. And I feel like that sometimes, like, I don't care about your philosophy, but do just tell me how it ends. Like when I imagine I want to live forever, it's because I really I want to see how it all comes out.
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand what you're saying. I think that is a very Western notion.
The end of things.
Yeah, because
Like it's not Buddhist.
yeah, exactly.
definitely not Buddhist.
And it's
Well, of
also
course,
like
we've got
there's
revelations.
other like a lot of other cultures have thought of like, you know, the cycle of life as, you know, like there's the whole like seasons and so it always spring comes and that was the notion that other cultures have had. And like, if I understand correctly, the kind of like end times and prophesize an end or prophesizing a utopia like what you get with the socialist and kind of idea and stuff like that. And even like people that aren't really, that nowadays call themselves secular, but they still kind of vaguely believe in a time far in the future when everything's just fine, right? Like the Star Trek,
Star Trek
idea.
model.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course.
It's really abstract and
Right.
very loose and there are no actual solid things, but they just generally kind of say someday in the future everything's going to be perfect. They assume, and you see it in the memes, like if this didn't happen, then we'd have society with the space society. You know, you see that kind of meme, and I don't know that that's something that we should really like. We shouldn't build our lives on that. We should build our lives on the idea that you know, time, for at least for us, even though our time's gonna end, like time keeps going after we end. And I think that part of the
that's
reason
what human reproduction is all about. That's how you actually live forever.
Sure. But I think that
Yes.
I think that might be part of the reason why people aren't so inclined to reproduce now. They don't have that kind of.
But that's
Well,
how you imagine the future.
I feel like people imagine that they're never going to end, though. They don't want to admit that they're going to die.
Well, you know, but the main problem is we have not just figured out how to transfer consciousness so that you can take over the body of your child, and you know, and then once that happens, liberals will be immortal.
I mean,
Because they will consume their children.
you know it.
They
feel
will
like-
only have children in order to further their own brain.
They're gonna
Look.
back away from abortion.
Exactly. If we ever invent the ability to transfer consciousness, and we know that for a fact it works, abortion is done. Because these liberals are going to be like, all right, I have a new vessel to inhabit.
They'll just be selling bodies,
Yeah.
which they're already doing.
Like, dude, have you seen Altered Carbon?
This might be the grossest conversation that we've had.
I'm loving this conversation. This is great.
Have you seen Altered Carbon?
No.
It's the show where they have a chip in their neck that stores their consciousness, and if they die, it can be transferred.
Oh, that's the transhumanist. That's a very transhumanist concept.
The first season was good. Second season was stupid, but basically, you can travel to other planets by basically downloading your consciousness and transmitting it. So you travel at the speed of light through your consciousness and then inhabit whatever body they have available for you there. So you get a different body. You invent something like that, abortion is over. There's going to be it's not alive yet. I'm taking its body.
Yeah, they will
Crazy.
be. They will be bought and sold on the black market, just like.
No, and black market? What do you mean? You go to
I
Colorado.
don't think so. You, just
Yeah, you
do
go
it
to Colorado, and there's going to
Buy
be
the
clinics,
fetus.
and they're going to sell pot and baby bodies to inhabit.
Oh God!
Well, you know what? Then that will be the thing. You know how they say that Planned Parenthood is not selling baby
to
bodies.
fund their
yeah.
Lamborghinis.
They're gonna go from saying it's not happening to
It's
it is
good.
happening to it's happening. It's a good thing.
It's a good thing because you know
It's a good
how else are
thing.
you going to get a new body?
Right?
when
How
you
else
get
are you
old?
gonna do it?
Oh, so gross.
Yeah, pretty horrifying.
I don't know that I believe it's possible to transfer consciousness because I believe we have souls.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I don't think we have souls, and
You
I
think we're
that-
just chemical reactions in our brains?
yeah, and that's why I don't think that it's possible to transfer consciousness.
So
I
you're
think
sort of a physicalist.
I think your brain is you, like all of your.
Haven't you ever talked to Malice or somebody who's done DMT?
Not that deeply known.
Like the common experience is that, or the general idea, and this could be whack, whatever, is that when you can see through the veil or whatever when you're on DMT, it's basically like every person has like a strand coming out of them. And so our conscious entity is actually a fragment of a greater extra dimensional thing we can't perceive. So there is something that you can't pick that up and move it to a different person unless you could travel outside of the reality of that we exist in. So it's not possible for us.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible either. I think that your soul exists inside your body, and I think that what makes a human being is their body and their soul and their consciousness combined.
Right. And if
I don't think your body is this amazing interface with the outside world.
And what
but
they're doing
you
is
can't
they're-
take it away and have a self.
they're creating facsimiles where they take your Facebook profile and then all of your posts are put into an algorithm where it can try to create a facsimile of you. And then with all of your voice being recorded and all your Instagram and TikToks, they'll download it into a robot and the robot will be like, Yes, I am Tim Pool. I have all his memories.
Total Recall is coming up, you know?
Yeah. Yep. There's that funny meme I mention all the time where the guy's like, me looking up from hell as a robot, as the robot I downloaded my consciousness into is masquerading as me. It's taking over my life. God. Yeah.
I mean, this is the stuff where like scientific progression is good and it's good and it's good up until a point where you hit it. There's like a turning point at some place along the line of scientific progression.
Yeah.
Where we've like crossed an edge that we shouldn't have.
Well, I don't know that we've done it yet, but there is definitely a point where, too much becomes, too much of the dose determines if it's poison or the cure, right? So like you can have a little bit of something. People that want to get Neuralink, right? If they want to get Neuralink because they have an actual severed spinal column and it's going to allow them to feel their body and move around again, that is something that I don't think anyone can say that's going to be a negative, right? That's going to be a good thing, almost all upside, right? But when you create the machine that can do that, you're also creating a machine that can do a whole slew of other things that are going to have a whole slew of downsides that we can't predict. So how many people get that kind of implant? How much, what kind of things are people that are writing software for that implant? What kind of software are they writing? All these things are questions that become important, and the answers you could never predict, and you can't predict how people are going to, consume something like being able to write memories into your own brain or write, someone else's memories into your own brain. So there's the initial yes, this seems like an obvious good because people that have a severed spinal cord would be able to walk again, but then all of the stuff that follows after it, and it's stuff that's entirely completely beyond human beings' ability to predict,
Well, I mean, we've already seen the danger of allowing some like woke Silicon Valley, 25-year-old coder to determine like what is on your social media feed. Imagine how much worse it's going to be if they're deciding what is like being fed directly into your brain.
Yeah. I mean, there is that, but I don't think that it just is. It's not even just ideology. Like the dangers transcend one ideology or the other, So I think that it's something that
it's gonna be weird. They're gonna be like, would you like to download into your brain an Aspen vacation? And then you just experience someone else's memory.
That's creepy.
Hard to imagine anything good coming out of this.
I mean, people's lives would just fall apart. Yeah. I suppose the end result would be they would network. Everyone would be networked and become the Borg.
That's the fear with Neuralink.
I mean, you would lose any connection to the real, tangible, physical world because every experience you have can be downloaded onto a computer chip.
Not only that, I mean, I wonder if a human like can psychologically deal with it, because if you're not sure if your memories are your own, or if you have memories that are implanted, like how does your brain react to that? What does that do to you psychologically?
There's an idea for a short film. Oh wait, was that Total Recall where he gets the memories downloaded in? It's like, I haven't seen Total Recall in so long, but wasn't it they tried giving him an experience of being a secret agent?
Yeah.
And so but like what happens? He goes insane or something?
Well, you're not really sure what it is. He goes and he wants to get the experience of being it, but you're also later on in the movie you're not sure if he actually was. And so that's they mix the thing where he was actually the secret agent, and the guy that he was created that thought he was going to get the experience was actually his cover or whatever. So, but it was mixing with those two.
We got enough time for one more thing. I want to talk about this story here. This is not the biggest news in the world, but it's interesting. There's a story from the Daily Mail. It's actually been covered quite a bit, where this 81-year-old guy killed an Uber driver who was 61. And I don't want to show the picture because it's kind of messed up. But here's what happened. Old guy gets a phone call, and it's a scammer basically saying, you're going to give us money, you're going to give us what we want, or otherwise we're going to cause you harm, right? Threatening his life. So he keeps this guy on the phone. He gets his gun. They say, we're going to come pick this thing up from you. They then schedule an Uber driver and tell the Uber driver, hey, can you come to this house and pick up a package? And she says, okay. So when she shows up, this guy on the phone thinks this is the person coming to kill him and his family. So he threatens her with a gun, like, what are you doing? Who are you? Stay away from my family. She fights him because she doesn't know what he's doing. Some crazy guy pulled a gun on her. He kills her. It's wild.
Yeah.
Like, what do you...
Crazy.
Yeah, this is crazy. I mean, a scammer called the dude, threatening him with death, said that his people were coming for him, and then tricked some other lady into going. What's this guy at his house supposed to do when a stranger shows up, as described, with a threat other than defend himself?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's another version of swatting. It's kind of the goal of swatting people was to get people, to harm someone, and this is.
I guess they were hoping that he would just give up whatever he had, and the Uber driver would take it and not realize what it was. Instead, somebody died. I bet this kind of thing happens all the time, to be honest.
Well, the shooting probably doesn't happen all the time.
No, exactly. I mean, like the scam.
Yeah, that's a pretty disturbing thing to do. It's interesting what's going on with the gig economy, because the ride share apps and the food ride share and all of that kind of stuff, like Uber Eats and Uber and Lyft and all of these things, they started out seeming like they were really going to be an improvement on things like taxi cabs and moped delivery drivers bringing you takeout food. And instead what we have is absolutely no accountability at all. There's no accountability on
it's worse than ever.
Yeah.
And it's more expensive now.
It's more expensive.
Yeah.
There's like 5 different fees if you get Uber Eats that you have to pay in order to get them to bring you food.
The food's already marked up too.
And the food's already marked up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's such a level of anonymity with all of this. Like, instead of going to a store and looking at somebody in the eye and giving them cash and they give you some good or service or whatever it is, you're like ordering it on your phone, and then somebody or just something comes and delivers it to your house. Like, there's a breakdown in a lack of like human contact and trust.
We use like these ordering apps and stuff, and I've noticed that it'll be like, Janet is your driver, and then some guy shows up.
Yeah.
From like, at this point, my attitude is, if it shows a picture of a person and says they're coming and a different person shows up, I'll be like, get off my property.
Yeah, what are
like
you
trespassing, like get off my property. And then I will call that company and be like, who is this strange man who showed up? Because what happens is when someone who delivers for these companies gets fired, they have a friend sign up for them and then just say, just give me your phone and I'll do it for you. No one says anything. But now you could have like a scammer or somebody coming to your house, and it's like,
well, and it's
They're
weird
not
too. Like
interested.
if you order Uber Eats, right? You like order through the app, so you have absolutely no relationship to the restaurant, and you have no relationship to the driver, and you have no relationship to the app. So like I've had situations where the Uber Eats will show up, like, because I travel a bit, and they'll just be like, "Oh, I left your food outside the door of the hotel."
what
Like
people,
on the street somewhere in Austin, you left my food there.
you know what people do? They'll order Uber Eats or DoorDash or Seamless or something. They'll say like, Wendy's, get me a, number 1 classic, or I don't know what Wendy's has. I don't know. Baconator. Is that what they have? A Baconator?
I don't know.
Whatever. And they'll be like 2 Baconators, a large fry, chicken nuggets, and a large soda. And then what these restaurants do is they make the order and then put it in an area for the drivers. The person who ordered it's already there, walks up and says, for Uber Eats, and then grabs the food and leaves. And then when the actual driver shows up, the food's not there. And they say to the person working at the restaurant, like, hey, I'm waiting for this order. And they go, that order's been taken. And then that Uber driver messages the company and says, food was stolen.
Oh, damn.
And then you at home, the person who scammed them, they go, I never got my food.
Right.
Yep.
Well, but also a lot of times if there's some issue, like I ordered something, I ordered like a whole meal and I only got a soda.
Jeez.
Oh, yeah. And
they wouldn't refund it. They were like, you've made too many complaints. And it's like,
here's the other funny
yeah,
thing,
that's because
too.
you keep screwing up and there's no accountability.
The other funny thing about it is the situation I just described. It was an Instagram video I watched where it was like a Seamless driver. He was on a bike and he had like a heater bag in front of his bike, and he walks into like a Wendy's, and they were like, that order's been taken. And he's like, looks, I've got a scammer, guys. And he explains what's going on. Some people, you go to Starbucks and they have on the counter just the food done. Meaning, what's to stop any random person from walking in and going, I'm the driver for this meal, and then taking it and leaving?
That's all you do. Also, if you walk into a Starbucks and you try and order something, they're so busy with the mobile orders and drive-through that you end up not ever being able to get anything. You just stand there forever waiting.
I think Amazon is closing their weird no employee stores. I heard that. I don't know exactly what's going on. But the problem is with self-checkout and with this DoorDash system, you can't have these things in a low trust society.
No.
Because you can't criminally charge someone who accidentally took the wrong food.
Right.
So if some guy orders a small coffee and a muffin, then they walk into Starbucks and see a large coffee and a sandwich and they grab it and leave. What are you going to do? Hey, you stole that. Be like, oh, I had ordered a So scammers can just be like skimming off the top, and you can't criminally charge someone for an accident. Someone goes to self-checkout and they're ringing things up, and then one item doesn't scan, but they don't notice. And they walk on, hey, that bag of cheese you didn't pay for. And they'll be like, I don't work here. I don't know. It creates plausible deniability for criminals to be like, I thought it scanned.
Well, and we created a high trust society, and then we decreased that trust and amplified the things that need trust to be effective. And that's why everything's crumbling. Like you saw, 911 went out in like 3 states.
Oh, man.
That's so messed up. It went out in Las Vegas, South Dakota, and a bunch of Texas and some Nebraska. I think.
And now creating a structure that's not conducive to social trust.
Okay, here's my conspiracy theory. We are in a simulation, and this is life was created 24 years ago, and everything was created by the creators of this universe to test whether humans could actually run the machines. So, you know what I mean? They're like, okay, are humans really smart enough to maintain a system like this? Let's build this system because, the aliens or God or whoever, they're very smart. And then see if we put humans in these positions, will they be able to sustain it? And we failed miserably. Everything's falling apart. Our nukes don't even work anymore. Matt Gaetz had a tweet about how a whole portion of our F-35s are not operational. We ordered these jets, they don't even work. We got 911's not working. In 20 years, just nothing works anymore. And it's like, well, humans are actually really bad at what they do.
I didn't realize that 911 was why would 911 go down in multiple states across the
cyber attack?
It's a cyber attack?
No, I don't know. But how does that happen all at once in multiple states?
Yeah, it's and such what seemed random spots. I don't know anything about the 911 system, so it's not like I'm speaking from a position of information here or speaking from an informed position, but that seems so weird. Just random states. You guys have a problem. You guys have a problem, and without any rhyme or reason. I don't understand, and I don't get it. But
I don't know. Look at what happened with Israel and Iran. Wasn't it like Israel launched missile strikes hitting Iran, and then Iran went, no, there were no missile strikes.
There was all a slap fight.
No, I mean this was legit, but then Iran says, no, nothing happened.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to be forced into a war they can't win.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's as much as, Israel's going to get a lot of crap from people that don't like Israel. Israel has been incredibly restrained dealing with Hezbollah and dealing with Iran and Iran's aggression through Hezbollah and stuff. All of the stuff going on in the north is all Iranian proxies. I know Hamas is not directly is not a direct
no, but
proxy.
They were trained by Hezbollah.
Yeah, but so it's a little looser, the association, but Hezbollah is got real weaponry that Hamas never had. Hezbollah
they're backed by Iran.
Well, that's the point that I'm making.
Yeah.
That's the point that I'm making.
Yeah.
That Hezbollah has still been shooting rockets into Israel for the past, ever since October 7th, every couple days or whatever, they're still having clashes with them. So they're having clashes with Iranian proxies. Iran attacks them because they went after the guy that was planning attacks with the Iranian proxies. And now it's if Israel was not being having restraint, they could have justifiably made a significant attack.
I will just say about the 911 lines that went down, it was not malicious. It was, in fact, the company that provides the call system said that the outages came from the installation of a light pole by a third party. So it's simply more incompetence and no accountability.
That's what I'm saying. Whoever, you guys know what mud flood theory is?
No.
The great mud flood. These conspiracy theorists believe that there is a great global empire called Tartaria. And then there was a great flooding event, which basically shifted the landscape and pushed mud up. And there are people who actually believe that we don't build buildings, we discover buildings.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that.
And there's
we don't build any buildings.
Yeah, we modern buildings we do, but they're if you go to Boston, you'll see a building where there's a door frame half buried, And they're like, why did this building have a door frame in its basement like this? And the theory is because it's actually not as old as people think, but the mud flood came and swept mud up to the door, and then they laid concrete down and then put new doors. It's ridiculous. It's wild. But these people believe that there was a greater civilization before us, and we are discovering what they already built. That being the case, we clearly don't know how to maintain any of it. So it's all just breaking.
Well, and we have lost so many of our skills. We're like on a technological decline of our actual ability. We saw that when everyone was trying to bake bread during the pandemic, and everyone was like, "What's a sourdough starter?"
No, we saw that with the Chaz Chop farm.
Sure, we've seen it multiple times. I'm just thinking of all the lefty Karens in their masks in Brooklyn trying to figure out how to bake bread. This
is a Star Trek episode. They go to a planet where the people are governed by an AI that does everything for them, and they I don't know if this is the one where they can't reproduce. I'm not sure, but they have an AI that basically, no, that's a different one. I think there's a force field, but there's an AI that governs them, and they've lost the knowledge of how anything works because they've never had to think about it. So now they don't even know how to fix their machines or anything. It's like, oh,
that's in the original series.
That was in the original series?
They have an original one of that too, and TNG, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there you go. We should go to Super Chats.
And if you... No, go ahead.
If you haven't already, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, head over to timcast.com, click join us, become a member. Why? YouTube is giving us the business. They've taken down and deleted our 2 biggest episodes 3 years after the fact. And they said, well, you broke the rules. And I said, and they're like, this was funny because the Google person said, just look, it's a warning. And so if you just don't do it again. And I'm like, again, I have 1,000 episodes on this channel. What do you mean? We've already done it. Like, what are you talking about? So I don't know if you want to support our work in the face of Google's censorship. We've got big news for next week. This is the last day in this studio. My friends, gone will be the Ninja Pirate backdrop. Gone. The guitar might be there, but the room's much bigger. So what's behind us is a lot harder to see. And so it'll be very different. Yeah, this is the last one. So become a member at Timcast if you want to support our work. We're going to have a lot more changes to come on Monday. Big changes. Timcast 3.0, 4.0, I guess. This will be our 4th studio.
Oh, wow.
5th studio. First studio was in the basement in Jersey. Then we moved it upstairs and built fake walls. Then we moved to the attic here. Then we moved to, this is called the sewing room, and this will be our 5th studio.
Wow.
Keep growing and keep growing and keep growing.
I've been in 3 of them. That's cool.
3 of them.
I've been in 3 of them.
You were in the... Which
I
one?
will have been in 3 of them once I go to the new studio.
You've been in the 2 that were here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there going to be a grand unveiling? There's got to be like a party or something.
Tomorrow's the big party.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of pro skateboarders coming out. There's going to be a big contest, $35,000 in total prizes.
Damn.
Shout out to Public Square, who is sponsoring the event as well, because we love Public Square. You guys should definitely download Public Square, the app. It shows you all of the businesses that believe in American values, so you can support the companies that support you with your dollars. And they're going to be involved, so we're really excited and very stoked that they wanted to be involved for sure. The Boonies, Boonies HQ on YouTube, and gonna be a lot of fun. Tomorrow's the big party, all day. Got a lot of fun stuff happening, and we're gonna be setting up Poker with the Boys as well. So this is the new poker show, and we got to figure this one out. Right now, the poker table, we have an RFID table. It's sitting in the green room, but I don't know if we could do a show in there. We might have to bring it up to the next floor because we need a computer and all this stuff. But we're probably going to do Poker with the Boys as a prop game, charity game, meaning no real cash will be exchanged by any of the players, but whoever wins can select a charity to receive the super chat revenue and $1,000 on top or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to play. The idea is Friday nights after the show, like tonight, the idea would be right at 10, the poker game kicks off where everyone's hanging out. And it's more of just a humor comedy hangout thing where people are playing poker. And it's not so much about poker. It's more about how funny it is when we're all laughing and people are drinking and hanging out because the games are silly. So that's the plan. And that'll probably be coming soon. That'll be great. But let's read Super Chats. Clint Torres, the first Super Chat with howdy people. No one saw that coming. Token Black Guy says, hey, Tim, what Garmin smartwatch do you wear? It is the Phoenix Pro 7, I believe. Is it? I don't know. The Phoenix Pro, one of them. And I like it a lot, although it's meaningless. What I like about it is that when I'm working out, it tracks my calories, heart rate, and that's really important because knowing how much you're burning, how much you're exercising, and which zone you're exercising in matters. And it then sends it to my FitnessPal app for where my macros are, and it tells me like my nutrition and all that stuff. It's fantastic. The thing is, though, it's got this thing called training readiness. Meaningless. Right now, it says my training readiness is 56. And it's like based on your heart rate and your HRV and stuff from sleeping. We think you're at 56. Moderate exercise. Don't go crazy. And then one day I woke up and it was at a 1. And it was like, do not exercise today. And I was like, what? And then I exercised. I had one of the best days of skating I've ever had. Felt like $1 million. And I was just like, I don't get this thing. And then I'll take like 2 days off. I'll eat really, really healthy. I'll stretch, but not work out and be like, I'm going to get 100%. And then I'll wake up and it'll be like, no, you better not exercise. And I'm like, what? It's
That's
just
crazy.
Yeah, it's just weird. I don't get it.
It's like when the GPS told Michael Scott to drive into the lake.
I will say one of the craziest things about this though is it's got a thing called body battery, and based on your heart rate, the food you ate and stuff like that, it tells you what percentage of body battery you have. And if you drink a beer, if you get drunk, the next day you wake up, your stats are all super low. It knows.
It can tell.
Oh yeah, like because your heart rate's out of whack, your deep sleep is bad, and it's like you cause damage substantially to your body from drinking. And then the funny thing is though, I always thought playing poker was relaxing. I'm just sitting here, the TV's on, I'm looking at cards, throwing away, looking at cards. It's super chill. And then when I got this watch, I'm watching the body battery just tick down, and I'm like, I'm just sitting here doing nothing. When I sit here on this show, it barely goes down, nothing moves. Heart rate stays the same, stress levels. When I play poker, it's like heart rate goes up periodically. And then I'm like, that I kind of get, you're in a big hand, but the stress level hits max. And I'm like, I don't feel stressed at all. But then the body batteries, and then after like a few hours, it's like, go to bed. And I'm like, whoa, that's weird. I feel fine. But it can tell something about your body changes while you're playing poker that increases activity.
Interesting.
Yeah. Wild. Let's go. Lincoln says the guy who bows to YouTube tells Trump to risk jail. That's really funny. There's like two different things. There's should you get your show banned for saying like a naughty word versus should you defend the fabric of this nation and stand up to this at the Supreme Court for presidential immunity, which will have repercussions for generations to come. I am not a president. I am not a mayor. I am not a elected official in any way. I'm a guy who complains on the internet. And my view is I'd like to complain on the internet more. So as I've stated before, there's 9,000 things we want to say. And one thing you just says don't say. And I'm like, we have an uncensored members only show where we can talk about things that maybe get a little dicey. But for the most part, none of these things are actual big issues. Like people live in this world where they think what can't I say? I'm like, don't say you want to kill anybody. Like, that's literally it. That's the only issue. That's why when they took the episodes down, I'm like, we didn't break any rules. There's like, what? They made it up. They claimed we supported QAnon. And I was like, that's a lie and you know it. No one on this show has ever defended or supported QAnon. We make fun of QAnon. That's a lie. And they're like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, and this is the show that after they deleted our Alex Jones, Michael Malice episode, we instantly brought them back on the show. They wouldn't tell us why they took it down. I said, okay, then I said, oh, well, then we'll do it again. And then a week later, we did it again. But there's a big difference between like Trump's strategies on how to deal with the law and whether Trump should not go to the Supreme Court hearing on presidential immunity, which is, I think, will have repercussions for this country forever.
I think he should go to it.
I agree. And I think it's a victory, too, because if they jail him for that, they make him a martyr for trying to defend this country.
They make him a martyr for standing up for his own due process rights.
But it's not just that. It's
the whole thing. It's all.
He has to be there for us. This country, if the left erodes the powers of the executive branch to this degree, part of me says, fine, arrest Barack Obama. But the reality is our president needs to be able to do his job. He needs to be there. And if he gets jailed for 30 days because of it or however long, then he can say they are jailing me for defending this nation, for standing up for the office of the presidency, which needed to be done. All right, we'll grab some more. Raymond G. Stanley Jr. says the Title IX rewrite is so out of pocket, like crazy, with Biden ishing on women's actual rights. One would think that all women wouldn't vote for him. They love it. Sorry, they love it. Look.
Just don't.
There's a video right now going viral of a trans woman who looks very masculine walking out of a women's bathroom, and a woman yelling at him, yelling at this person. I actually don't know the person's identity, so I'm not going to use pronouns. You see, we'll be respectful here. But women watch these videos. They know these videos exist. And they get mad at the woman who yelled at the male. Women love males in their spaces. Not all, but enough of them to vote and vote in this way. Like I mentioned, there's a reason why Dylan Mulvaney's followers are all female.
The only thing women are really committed to is they want to be able to have abortions.
I suppose. I don't know. All right. Stephen Patton says, my birthday's on Sunday. The best gift I can ask for is for you to give my debut fantasy novel a shout out as Nomads Wander by Stephen Patton. Shout out to all of the Timcast viewers building culture. And that book is As Nomads Wander by Stephen Patton. I hope that you see many sales and end up on the New York Times bestseller list, which is an editorial list and has nothing to do with how many books you sold. Hans Gruber says, why did Phil stop saying failed musician? I think Phil was worried that Hassan was going to hurt himself. So
It's a long intro, man. Like every day, like every day. Phil Labonte, lead singer of the heavy metal band All That Remains, and real failed musician, anti-communist, counter-revolution. That's a long thing every time, man.
Here's a good one. Danish Patriot says the Bloomberg article about the UAE's cloud seeding program, which resulted in mass flooding, has been changed. Now it's climate change.
Now it's climate change, but they said it was cloud seeding.
Yep.
But what the hell?
Would you want to look it up to see what it says now?
It's the Bloomberg one. I don't have access to Bloomberg. You know, it's like $40 a month.
Cody White says, yeah, but you still see the headline on Google.
Yeah, I'm checking it out.
YouTube has also been shadow banning Joe Rogan's episode with Tucker Carlson. I saw that. People were mentioning the views were super low. So I don't think it's shadow banned because people want to watch Joe Rogan. I think the views are masked. So it looks like it's not prominent.
Yeah, now it says...
No, it says 1 million views.
Yeah.
Here's why experts don't think cloud seeding played a role in Dubai's downpour. Another one says record rainfall in Dubai. Blame climate change, not
climate
seeding.
change.
Yeah, they don't
Wow.
think...
Dude, I'm blaming
Morons.
climate change for everything.
You
I'm just
idiots.
rolling with it.
You...
Next time I do something to piss off my girlfriend, I'm just going to be like,
Climate change.
It's climate change, babe. Babe, it's climate change.
She's going to be like, did you feed Seamus? And I'll be like, climate change? She'll be like, oh, okay, I get it. I'll be like, yeah.
Take out the garbage?
Hey, I got an idea. We should do a bit where like those Mentos commercials.
Fresh
And then it's
better.
just like holding up a paper that says climate change or whatever.
Yeah, it's climate change.
Those commercials are funny. There was like, I remember one where this guy has his car parked and then someone wants his spot. So he pays, like some guy pays construction workers to lift the car up and move it so we can steal the spot. And the guy's like, what are you doing to my car? And then he goes, Mentos. And the guy goes, oh, of course, you're eating mints. That's why you moved my car into the middle of the road. Like those commercials were nuts. But we should do that, but with climate change.
Blame everything on
Late
climate
for
change.
work. Why are you late? Climate change. Really? That's right. Wow. Well, I can't fire you for that. Yeah, that's right. Acromatic says Bitcoin halving in T-minus 10 minutes, but that was at 8:06. The Bitcoin halving has happened.
Yeehaw.
And if you look at the Bitcoin price charts, every time a halving happens, within like, it's basically algorithmic. You can look at it and be like, a halving happened, and then 6 months later, the price went up X amount. Then a halving happened, and the price went up X amount. So people are projecting right now, I think 200,000 per coin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's a lot of people talking about the mistakes people are making with Bitcoin. And people are saying things like, how could one Bitcoin be worth so much? And it's like, because it breaks up into decimal points. Mm-hmm. And so there will come a time, I can't remember who said this. They were like I think it was Zero Hedge. In 50 years, the idea of owning a single Bitcoin will be a big deal. Like the word millionaire or billionaire, there will be a whole coiner. And someone who's a whole coiner is someone who has like $500 million. It's like, you have one whole Bitcoin? You have a single coin? Yeah. Because the rewards are going to start dropping down to the decimal points within, the next 16 or whatever. Right now, I think the reward might be like one point something Bitcoin per block or whatever, divided up for your mining network or whatever. I don't know too much about it. But that means these big companies are eventually going to produce less than one coin every time they solve a block. So if you have one coin, that means every company's attempt to generate revenue will always be less than the amount you're holding,
Interesting.
which like the value is going to go up a lot.
Right now, I think it's 6.25.
So it's down to 3 then, I think. Are you sure?
Well, I put it into Brave and
The
Brave
having
answer
just
says-
happened then, so it should be 3. I thought it was 3-1, but I could be wrong.
So it'd be 3.13 or whatever.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And yeah, the projections right now are that one coin will equal 200K. And then we're going to move to a period where people stop saying Bitcoin, they start saying sats.
What's sats?
It's the lowest decimal point of a Bitcoin. They're called satoshis. So they're going to stop saying, one Bitcoin is 200,000. In 50 years, they're going to say one sat is $3.
Interesting.
And when one sat is $3, one Bitcoin is $3 million.
Wow.
Yep. And then, of course, with inflation, it's actually equivalent to maybe like $300,000.
So that's part of the reason why Bitcoin is so likely to reach like $1 million of Bitcoin and stuff. It's not just that the value is going to go up and they're scarce. It's that the value of the dollar is likely to continue to go down significantly. So.
RF Daniel says, I'm 22 and in the beginning of the show, but I'm Gen Z and work in a factory with old heads. I don't know what you mean by the beginning of the show. But most Gen Z men that I know in Iowa are all right-leaning. My first time ever voting was 2020. I voted for Trump, and so did most of Iowa. Well, you're in Iowa. But prediction. Young men are right-wing. Young women are left-wing. Young women turn 35. They all become conservative. Not all of them, but you'll see a bunch of these women become conservative.
Mm-hmm.
Because men can have kids and families whenever they want, and women can't. And that is not meant to be mean or derisive. It's just true. So a lot of women who are like millennials who are going to be approaching 35 are going to start considering so 35, I think, is when they call it a geriatric birth. I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, that's correct. 35.
Yeah. So these women who are 35, it's like, what do you think they're thinking when the doctor says, well, if you consider having a kid now, it's considered geriatric. You're very old. And they're going to be like, what? And it's like, well, I mean, once you're in your 40s, you can't have kids anymore. Donald Trump was what, 60 when he had Barron?
Yeah, but he's male.
Exactly. That's
Totally
what I'm saying.
different.
So
animal.
these young men are like, I can have a family whenever I want. A guy's going to be like, maybe I'll have a family when I'm 50. And then the woman's going to be like, I can't do that. So, well, good luck, because all of your peer group of males are going to be right-leaning. So they're either not going to have families or they're going to have to capitulate and say, I'll be whatever you want me to be.
If the males are right-leaning, are the females going to start becoming right-leaning?
Yes.
You think so? You think that what's that going to do to the trans debate, like we were discussing earlier?
The future is conservative. Based on the math, for a variety of reasons, the future will be conservative. One, liberals abort, sterilize their kids, and Gen Z and younger males are right-leaning, and females are left-leaning. Oh, look at that camera. The last view of the studio, everybody. Notice in the back of the room, there's nothing there anymore. But so basically what happens is, my prediction is that many women who are millennial, Gen Z-ish, who are very liberal and left-leaning, are not going to become conservative. But because of the pressure to, look, you only have a certain amount of time while you can have kids, once they start getting older, they're going to say, if I want to have a kid, I have to marry a conservative guy because all the guys are conservative. Mm-hmm. And they're going to go around dating, and they're going to be like, well, I'm progressive. And the guy's going to be like, not interested, bye. She'll be like, why aren't you interested? And they'll say, lady, with all due respect, I'm 35. I got 35 more years to have a family. You don't. I can do whatever I want, and I can wait as long as I have to find a woman who I think will be a good mother to my kids. And this is going to put massive pressure on women that men won't face. So I think the end result is a lot of women will say, fine. The only other conundrum there would be guys are going to be like, I think the issue might actually be a little bit different. It won't be that women outright just become conservative. It's that a lot of these Gen Z guys are going to be like, you're a liberal progressive, bye. And she'll be like, please, like, I'm trying so hard. I want to have a family. It's like, I'm not going to marry you. You'll just divorce me and take the kids and then
all of the money.
Yeah.
And be like
not
a
interested.
bitch about the divorce.
And then conservative women are going to have a much harder time, or a much better time actually, because there's going to be so many guys. They're going to have the pick of the litter. The guys are going to be like, it's so tough to find a good conservative woman, and all the liberal women are going to be freaking out because they can't find families, and it's going to cause social upheaval for sure. I think a lot of these women will start claiming to be conservative. Maybe they don't vote that way, but they're going to be like, I'm not progressive.
I think they're just going to either become single mothers by choice and do sperm donors because they're going to be totally fine with that and suckered into the idea that children don't need fathers. Or they're just going to be like Chelsea Handler and get stoned and jerk off.
I think getting stoned and jerking off, because they're not going to have kids. They're going to be like, I can't afford it. I can't have kids. There will be some women who do, but I think it's going to be a minority.
Yeah, I had a whole conversation. There was like a number of women who were older than me in the theater community who had bought into the whole careerist mentality in the arts and did not have children. And they were hitting their early and mid 30s and like late 30s. And they were trying to figure out what to do because they wanted to be mothers. And they couldn't figure it out. And so the biggest option was single motherhood by choice. And I was actually commissioned to write a play about single motherhood by choice for Williamstown Theater Festival in Massachusetts. And I ended up doing a lot of digging into it. And my play was about how this was a really bad idea. And I ended up writing about essentially how sperm donors and people who are donating eggs and all these things, how it's important to take responsibility for your own genetic material. And I ended up in the workshop reading of the play, and the director of the festival, who I think it was Roger Rees at the time, he was like, we're not really interested in these deep conversations about the meaning of life. And I was like, yeah, but I was commissioned. Like, what did you think was going to happen? Like, this is where we land.
I heard someone said this, and I remember who, that women solve their problems more emotionally. And so what happens is when boys are raised without fathers, then they solve their problems emotionally, get older, and then solve their problems emotionally. But male emotion is a bit more aggressive and violent. And so it results in guys doing drugs, going to jail. Whereas guys who are raised by their guys and taught to solve things logically don't react emotionally and avoid the conflicts and the fights and things like that.
Well, we should hope so. Yeah.
It is true that kids who don't have dads are more likely to commit crimes and, go to jail.
Kids definitely need dads in their lives.
All right. RF Daniel says, this is my second super chat tonight, but before tonight, I've been at work in a factory. At 22 years old, many young people support you and your team. The second super chat is just because I want to support you and your team, but Gen Z is definitely leaning right. The dudes are. But it looks like younger women are going further left. But like I said, I think there will be massive social pressure on Gen Z women as they get older, and they're going to have to realize, if I don't abandon these views, they'll have to lie. They're going to go on dates and they go, I am not progressive. And they're going to be thinking, like, if this guy finds out that, I was like a liberal activist or whatever, he'll never want to see me again. And they're going to have to stop entertaining all that stuff. I think ultimately, the reason why I think it leads to them becoming conservative is because then they will find themselves surrounded by women who are all saying conservative things, whether they believe it or not, because they want to have families and they want to fit in, and social force is powerful.
I think they're just going to end up lonely.
A lot of them, maybe most of them.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of women are going to be like, I am done with progressivism. It lied to me. Remember, you see that article from that woman who said feminism lied to me?
Yeah, I mean, she's not wrong. Feminism lied to all of us.
It went super viral, and she's like, I was told to save my eggs and have kids. And she's like, now I'm getting older and being told I can't. And like, what's going on? There was one woman who was featured on the cover of a magazine about freezing her eggs for her career. Mm-hmm. And then her eggs were destroyed. And they were like, you will never be a mother. And she like broke down and started screaming. And it was like, yep.
That's what's going to happen. Yeah.
I mean, that's the interesting part about this, the sexual revolution, is that the ultimate in feminism is that the ultimate conclusion to that is bringing power much more aggressively in the men's court, right? It's like historically women had much more sexual power than men did. And that was what kind of sort of balanced out the dynamics between the genders, and erasing that gives men exclusive power relationally.
Well, that's why when the feminist movement was, really getting going in the 70s, there were men who were involved who pushed abortion onto the platform.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anthony Shaw says, farewell to the old studio. I've been in the Tim train since 2019. On to the new and better. Love the conversation and debate. Rock on, Phil. Ian was where I was 20 years ago. Keep rolling 20s, brother and sisters. We may find ourselves in this studio sometimes, depending on why we may need to come back here, whatever. So the studio will still exist, and we might put a different show in it. But we have a new, much bigger, better property, studio, facility, multiple buildings. It's pretty wild. Pretty wild. So awesome stuff to come. Really excited. All right. We'll grab a couple more super chats. Harry Lawrence says, this is sad. I'm old enough to remember when gay meant happy and queer meant strange. The only sport that only women can win is women's gymnastics. I do not believe that's true. There's viral videos of guys who do women's routines, and yeah. There are some really funny videos where women do some things the guys can't do, and that's based on like hip ratio to shoulder ratio and things like that. But there was some random dude, non-Olympian guy who works out. He does gymnastics and works out. And he's non-competitive, and he did. Who is Simone? What's her name?
Simone Biles.
Simone Biles.
Biles. He
Yeah.
did her routine, and it was just like some random guy, and it's like, dude. The funny thing about Caitlin Clark is they're like, did you know that she's like tied with Steph Curry, or she like beat Steph Curry? And it's like, and she's what, like 2 feet closer to the hoop, using a smaller ball at a lower height. So it's like that's totally different things. And they're like, yeah, but they don't count it that way. And I'm like, okay. All right, guys, ladies and gentlemen, I have a new standard. It's called pick drop. If I launch this pick and it lands anywhere within the visual radius of Phil, that's worth 876,000 points in basketball because I made the rules up. Phil saw it. I now beat Caitlin Clark and Steph Curry for points in basketball. Now my rules are dramatically different. My ball was a guitar pick. Mm-hmm. My hoop was the whole room, and I only had to do one time to win hundreds of thousands of points. But you know,
The best part was my hoop was the whole room.
That's right. Yeah. All right, everybody, if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, become a member at timcast.com, and say goodbye to the Cast Castle, for after tonight, it will be the boonies, and the Cast Castle will be but a memory. So, again, you can follow the show at Timcast IRL on Instagram, because I don't know what's going on at X. Follow at Timcast on Twitter, and follow rumble.com/TimcastIRL. That will matter moving forward based on what YouTube has basically said to us. So, you know, there you go. Brandon, do you want to shout anything out?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm Brandon Gill. I'm the Republican nominee for U.S. Congress from Texas 26. You can find more out about me at brandongillforcongress.com.
Right on.
I am Phil That Remains on Twix. I'm Phil That Remains Official on Instagram. The band is All That Remains. You can follow us on Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, YouTube, you know, the internet. Keep your eyes out for the All That Remains Instagram page. That's Instagram.com/All That Remains. And also keep an eye out on Monday. There are going to be big announcements coming Monday morning. Big announcements. Libby.
I'm Libby Emmons. I'm the editor-in-chief for The Postmillennial and Human Events. You can check out everything we're doing there, thepostmillennial.com, humanevents.com, and you can find me on Twitter at Libby Emmons.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you coming to the show. See you in the new studio. Cheers.
And the last super chat from Cast Castle, from Dane Font. He says, paying child support to all my poker baby mamas at Timcast Media. Heart emoji. We will see you all with clips throughout the weekend, and then we're back on Monday. It's going to be fun.